All right. Hello, guys. Let's just start this off by confronting the fact that 2020 has certainly been a year for the books. But it's been a great time to actually reflect on what makes Maryland unique and help communities come together in support of each other, which is why I'm really glad that MEDA has extended the celebration of Economic Development Week into a 10-week-long tribute. So these videos, like the one that we're having today and some of the others in other industries, are just a chance to highlight the various industries and economic development partners that make this area so special. So I am Allison Akers. I am co-chair of the MEDA Young Leaders and a MEDA board member coming to you today from Anne Arundel County. And today I have the great pleasure of highlighting our agriculture industry. So today we welcome Steve McHenry, Executive Director of MARBIDCO, and he'll go a little bit into that and what that long acronym stands for, and Martin Proulx, Agriculture Business Development Manager for Charles County. So Steve, why don't you give a background on MARBIDCO and what it stands for and who you are?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Allison and Martin. It's great to be with you. MARBIDCO stands for Maryland Agricultural and Resource-Based Industry Development Corporation. We are essentially Maryland's agricultural finance authority. We were established and made operational 14 years ago. I was hired exactly almost to the day 14 years ago. Wow. And we offer 15 agricultural finance programs, low interest loans, some targeted grant programs to help sustain Maryland's agricultural, forestry, and seafood industries. And we also work to support an environment that's conducive to local food and fiber production and processing. So that's a brief background about MARBIDCO, and I look forward to the conversation today.
Incredibly important. And Martin, let's hear from you about your role in promoting agriculture in Charles County.
Good morning, Allison and Steve. I always think I have a long title until I follow Steve McHenry's. My name is Martin Proulx. I'm the Agriculture Business Development Manager with Charles County Economic Development. I've been in this role since September 2017. There's a general term for what I do for Charles County, and that's an ag marketing professional, or AMP for short, which is a general term used for either the agricultural point of contact within a county's economic development department or other related organization. And then we also have AMPs at the state. Steve and his team would qualify as well. In economic development, I do business and development operations, as well as keep the pulse of the agricultural needs within the community of our businesses. And I think that's the brief version.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So let's dive into a couple of questions. So the agriculture industry has certainly been impacted by COVID, as many of the other industries have across the nation. What are you hearing as it relates to the agriculture industry in Maryland?
Well, let me start, Allison. Certainly the COVID-19 pandemic had a terrific impact in a not so good way on Maryland's agricultural industry. If you were a producer selling into restaurants, if you were an oyster farmer selling into restaurants, if you were a dairy farmer selling milk into institutional markets, you were dramatically affected last spring when the pandemic hit. And on the upside, the pandemic really highlighted for Maryland consumers the importance of local agriculture.
Absolutely.
It's the demand for local has just gone through the roof. So what we saw last spring, and MARBIDCO was fortunate to receive some CARES Act funding to help with this from the federal government, a number of farmers who had to adjust on the fly how they were serving their markets. If you were selling to restaurants, if you had the capacity to turn around and sell directly to the home consumers, you did that. And it was amazing to see produce producers in particular do that. Our livestock processing industry in Maryland has also seen a huge uptick in demand. Our livestock producers in the state are having trouble getting processing time slots at the local processing facilities because the demand has just gone through the roof. So we saw some disruptions in the national food supply chain in the spring, as I'm sure you know, particularly in the meat processing side. But those supply chain disruptions have been corrected. And so fortunately today, things are back on track. And there's certainly a lot of opportunities going forward for Maryland farmers.
Do you think, since I have you already, and then we'll jump to Mark, do you think that you've seen any food safety issues in these industries?
Now, we have a very safe food supply in this country. If you're a fruit or vegetable producer of any size, you're following the Federal Food Safety Modernization Act requirements, what's called good agricultural practices, and all the wholesale food suppliers require their their farmers to be meeting those federal requirements. And then on the meat side, all meat that's sold in Maryland is USDA inspected. So our food supply is very safe.
Glad to hear that. I expected that answer though. Martin, so how have you seen the agriculture industry impacted?
So the observations have certainly been similar to Steve. I think the key word is food supply chain disruption. COVID-19 hit, and although our agricultural operations were dubbed essential, many of their channels were not, and they were left without anywhere to go. Marketing and distribution channels became slim, and they had to pivot very quickly. As far as food safety goes, I think as consumers, also something Steve said is we became even more conscious of the importance of buying local, knowing where our food came from, and more importantly, how it was handled. So the operations that were already practicing pretty safely then had to take extra steps, time, and effort to do the no contact and find ways to connect with your customers. Some trends we saw were certainly CSA, which stands for Community Supported Agriculture. Prepay for your box is prepackaged, and you can either pick it up at the farm, it's dropped off at a safe location, or delivered to your home. Our farmers adapted very, very quickly. The collaborative efforts, farmers markets did not open immediately. Luckily, they did get to enjoy what seemed to be a fairly successful summer with the guidance from the Maryland Department of Agriculture as far how to safely and socially distance and keep everyone safe involved. There was a lot of collaboration. Vendors that may not have been able to participate in farmers markets this year worked together to either pool resources when it came to delivery or drop-offs. And we just, and to no surprise, the resilience of the agricultural industries really shined through.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know in Anne Arundel County, our farmers markets have definitely increased in people over the pandemic. I love to see it. So either one of you, if you want to jump in, what do you see for the future of the industry? Maybe Martin, since you just spoke, you can.
Sure. Well, let's hope the buy local surge is going to stick. With that demand increase, obviously it looked as though the producers, as far as what kind of financial resources they needed through this pandemic, was really for operational expansion one way or another, whether it was storage, and Steve may be able to speak to that, what they were looking to do, but it was almost expansion to be able to cater to that demand that suddenly came to them during the COVID-19 crisis. More control of the supply chain locally is, I think, has always been something Maryland has been looking to do. But again, with this desire to know where your food is coming from and keep it local, processing that might not be taking place local or within certain communities may really come to the front line. Agritourism was certainly a great excuse to socially distance this summertime. We saw a lot of success at the local, either U-pick pumpkin patches, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. Again, agritourism is always evolving, so things to keep a pulse on, but outdoor activities certainly seem to be a very popular thing to do when socially distancing.
Great points.
Yeah,
how about you?
Yeah, in terms of what Martin was just saying about, increased demand for local food products, cold storage has proven to be a big challenge for many farmers, both produce farmers as well as livestock producers. And we're pleased we were able to make a good number of loans and grants for refrigeration facilities on the farm. And so hopefully we're helping to meet that need. But yeah, there's just tremendous opportunities for Maryland farmers. We have a real advantage in Maryland in that we have a large population in and around the state of people that need to eat 3 times a day. So Maryland farmers are well positioned to serve those local markets.
Absolutely. So that kind of ties into what should economic developers know about how best to support the agriculture industry? I mean, you talked about the loans that have happened. Are there any other things we should think about?
Well, yeah, just generally, I would encourage all of Maryland's economic development community to be aware generally of MARBIDCO's programs. Martin is one of 13 agricultural marketing specialists or agricultural development officer, whatever the county titles them. And we certainly encourage other counties to think about adding such positions to their local economic development staffs. What Martin and his colleagues do is just incredibly important. They work on a daily basis with farmers to not only find markets for products, but they also act as a resource and almost an ombudsman to work with the local health department, the county zoning office, et cetera, when farmers have local needs of a regulatory sort. So, but we're here to help. We're a resource. We know. I don't want to say we know everything, but we know where to turn to for information about University of Maryland Extension programs, USDA programs, what the state has to offer in terms of resources, financial and otherwise. So, please, look us up on the web, www.marbidco.org, and be encouraged to, and also reach out to your local farm community, your local forestry community. Forestry is a huge sector of Maryland's economy that people don't think much about, that's in some trouble right now. And so we're working in that regard to help sustain our forest products industry in the state.
Great points. How about you, Martin? How can economic developers best support the industry?
Sure. Because it's relevant to some projects Charles County has going on right now, I would say the first thing to know is that antiquated language, zoning code, and/or regulations are going to hinder the growth of the agricultural industry, which is evolving at a rapid pace. Whether it's technology, whether it's agritourism, whether it's value-added processing, language that was put in place for traditional practices is certainly going to cap our abilities as economic developers to kind of help expand and foster the growth and the preservation of these industries. I would say that we can't forget the traditional practices and the importance, because agriculture has proven to be an economic backbone of the state. But just being familiar that it's not the same as it was 50 years ago. Agritourism is evolving in of itself. When we first put agritourism in place, trying to define it, we were thinking pumpkin patches and hay rides. We weren't thinking goat yoga and glamping and farm stays.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. And that is a huge trend coming up, I see. Well, Martin, Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. You've brought up some great points for us all to think about of the agriculture industry. And I'm glad to hear that the industry is resilient and continues on during the pandemic. So thank you guys today. To all of my guests watching, we encourage you to visit the MEDA website to learn more about economic development in Maryland. And that is medamd.com. And we look forward to highlighting all of the other industries throughout Maryland. Thanks.